I've got several people with me, but they're not staying the whole time. They're just here for a little bit. So, today I want to talk about the spring of the year, but it's not springtime yet, so you have to hang around to see why I'm talking about the spring when it's not spring yet. All right, well, it's almost Valentine's Day, and so look, show him your hand, Hudson. He was painting some cards for some friends, and oh my, did you make handprints? Yeah, see, last week for my birthday, Mommy helped little Miss Corey make something for me. So she made handprints with Miss Corey's hand and her little footprints, her little love sign. I really like this. So Hudson had the idea too to actually make handprints, but his are with red paint, so it looks a little more scary.
I did that too.
You did it too? Did your hands get red?
Yep.
Are they still red?
And they're gone.
Oh, you cleaned your hands. Good job. Where's that? I can't see this hand.
Yeah,
there it is. There's just a touch of red still left on your fingertips.
Yeah,
But you did good. Awesome. Alrighty. Are you guys?
Let's go.
Alright, see you guys later.
Let's go play Spy.
And off they go. Alright, so in my Bible reading this morning, I had 2 Samuel chapter 11, and it has this phrase that is so haunting, almost it's like beautifully haunting. It says, "It happened in the spring of the year, at the time when kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem." And what continues on, you read, actually it says, the next verse, "Then it happened one evening that David arose from his bed and walked on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful to behold." So we see this moment when King David is supposed to be out and about, going to battle in the spring of the year. That's the phrase that's just used. So, the chronicler who is writing out this just makes the assumption that all of us know that the king ought to be going off to battle in the spring of the year, when kings go to battle, the time when kings go to battle automatically. But David doesn't. He stays home. So it was noteworthy enough that it was put in Samuel, and we see it also over in which chapter is that? First Chronicles 20. We see it also where it just says that, gives a little bit of the same account. There was the spring of the year. It's time for kings to go to battle. David stayed home. And at first, when I read that the first time through, I never noticed this as a kid. As I got older, I started hearing more people say things like, okay, so what is it? Why is David staying home? In the spring of the year, he ought to be headed out. Why is he at home? And then they go, it goes on into the conversation of what are kings supposed to be doing. Should the king be at the head of his armies when he goes out? Then the next, I remember probably in my early 20s hearing a pastor talk about it, saying, look, it says that he arose from his bed, or in some translations from his couch, at the end of the day, in the evening, he arose from his couch. So it looks like he's been laying around all day, and maybe he just lay down for a nap, who knows? But he gets up late in the day, and then he goes up on the roof of his house, and he sees something there that, again, the chronicler doesn't seem to think that it's that shocking to say that he looks across and he sees a woman bathing on the roof of the house. So it seems like maybe this is something that would have happened. Who knows why? I don't get all of this cultural stuff. I just know that what happened next was a real problem for David. So he sees the woman, he calls her over, he has a relationship with her, a child is conceived, he tries to bring King Uriah home. Uriah is one of his mighty men, one of the men that were close to him all those times when King Saul was chasing David around like a dog, trying to kill him. All of that time, Uriah was faithful to him and was with him and helped him in that season. And now Uriah comes home. Uriah is loyal. He says, no, I'm supposed to be at war. I'm not supposed to be at home. He refuses to go home. And as a result, David sends a note by his hand back and says, hey, can you get this guy killed in battle? And it's when you read the whole thing, you're like, this is not this is not honorable, this is not good. And yet it's very real. It's very much what is actually happening in King David's life. And so later we find King David going out to battle again and doing what kings ought to do. And there's a time when his men say, look, you're almost dying, but we can't have you do this. We can't have you die. And they try to pull him out of battle again. And it's an interesting season in David's life. But I wanted to just, right now it's not quite springtime outside. There were actually moments. I was up at Estes Park again this past, Monday and Tuesday, because we were finishing the film project that we had started last November, December. And I saw some things up there that just reminded me of springtime in Montana. So in Montana, in the spring, it wouldn't, not yet, this is February. So February, March, sometime coming there would be this moment in the springtime when enough warm days would follow that the frozen earth and the frozen snow would begin to break up. And we literally had breakup. It was a time when we would try not to run the heavy trucks on the road because they were just going to break everything up if we ran them. It was a season where things got muddier and there was still snow around. It wasn't quite spring, it wasn't quite winter. It was an in-between time. And as a kid, I remember walking out there as a boy, going out, and I'd stand and underneath the different trees, so like the blue spruce or sometimes the fir trees and others, there would be the beginning of a melting spot out from underneath the tree. So the place where there hadn't been much snow because the tree had protected it, that spot underneath where the earth was showing through would begin to grow wider and wider. Eventually, when springtime came, you would actually have little things growing out there while there might still be patches of snow in other places. And I remembered that, and I saw some spots in Estes that just reminded me of that. And it wasn't, it was not yet springtime in Estes, but it just reminded me of that. And then we even saw a cow moose with with her calf walking around while we were filming. They were just like 100 yards from us, feeding in the creek while we were filming on a lake, And so it was a fascinating. I love being outdoors, so I'm glad for the opportunity I had to be out there working again. But the springtime of the year in this. Oh, I got Peter coming in.
Hey.
Hi. Are you hanging out, or are you guys headed out with Mama? What's going on?
Really? She's leaving today? I didn't know.
Well, everyone's leaving several times.
to get some mail, because everybody's making Valentine's.
Oh, you came to pick up mail?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have any mail. Do you need mail from me?
Well, I need
Uh-oh. My dancer is dancing. Okay. So, I'll just tell you about my coffee this morning. I ground it myself, and it's just a Three Peaks coffee that I got from Nederland. So it's good coffee, but I've started trying to make slightly smaller cups so that it's more compressed and is a little bit darker. Did you find what you need, Peter?
Yep.
Alrighty. But I think more than the fact that it's springtime in this passage, I think more than that, what it really means, what I was taking out of it was, here was an ordinary season when things would happen. So for instance, had King David been at complete peace with all of the people around him, he would have been out inspecting the cities, inspecting the walls, inspecting the lands, and building things. He would have had the workmen hired that were coming in, and he would have been overseeing projects. So had he not gone out to war, like this was probably a conflict that was never quite decided in the fall, and so they waited until the weather was a little bit better, then they both came back out to war. And so in the spring of the year, when kings go out to battle, was made more sense. Like now, I feel like we still have that long-standing saying that you don't want to attack Russia in winter because it's just too much snow and you'll freeze your soldiers before you actually get anywhere. And so we still have some limitations in today's modern warfare period, but there's still but for the most part, we're actually able to carry out war much more at any time because of the technology that we have. But anytime you have to put people on the ground, you have to consider what are the conditions, what's the weather like, and all that. And that was especially true even 100 years ago or less. And if you go back and you look at the way warfare was happening in the Bible, then that was especially true. Is there were seasons of warfare. There were seasons when you stayed home, you withdrew just because neither one of you could actually make progress, and so they wouldn't come to a decision. It was just, and so for whatever reason, in the spring of the year was that season when you came back out to battle, because now in my mind, the snow is melted, breakup is over. We can bring our people out there, and we can battle can happen again. But I think for myself, in thinking about it, it had less to do with war, less to do with kings, and more to do with the fact that there are seasons that we do things. There are some things that we do over and over again, and as a result, Hey Hudson, are you going to come on inside and say hi? Uh-oh, you're gonna dance on the circles. And so there are seasons that we do things. So I could say something, for instance, I could say at the dawn of the morning, when everyone around the city was rising up and going to work, Joseph stayed home in his bed. And you'd say, why? Why are you staying home in your bed? And if I have a real reason to say, well, I was staying home because he was sick or whatever, you would say, okay, so he's taking the day off, he's going to be home in his bed today, he's not doing well. But if I say there's actually nothing wrong with me, I'm not sick, there's nothing physically wrong with me, but I'm just going to stay home, you say, why? Why are you staying home? And if I say, well, actually, I work from home, you're like, oh, okay, so you're going to get up and you're going to go, like I do this all the time. I get up, I walk downstairs, and I go to work right here in this room. And so that's different. But last week when I was working on the film, I had to change my morning routine because I was working on someone else's schedule. And so suddenly I was getting up at 4:30 and I was making my coffee and eating breakfast and all of that stuff. And at 6 o'clock, I was ready to go to work. That's what was happening because I was on a film set. And so that's what I did. And then, I expected that I was going to be working for probably 12 hours at least because I was in the art department, maybe longer. I'd get a break for lunch. And usually it ends up being at least 45 minutes to an hour that I actually got a break at lunchtime. And so I knew the rhythm and the routine, and I would fall into that rhythm and routine. But at home, I also have one. And the reason... I think of King David. He had a rhythm. This was an annual rhythm. You go out at the head of your armies. But he breaks that rhythm with no real reason. He doesn't actually do his routine. He actually does something different. And when he does something different, he opens himself up to, he doesn't know King David, he puts his armor on, gets his sword out and everything, and he goes out to battle. Well, this is something he's used to doing. He knows how to live in tents. He knows how to be in the field. He knows how to be talking with his mighty men, his warriors. He knows how to give commands. He knows how to assess a battlefield situation and say, okay, how many men do they have? How many men do I have? He knows how to set a battle in array. He's done this a lot of times. He automatically knows the things to do if he puts himself in there. But when all of his men leave and go out to battle and he's left at home, it seems as if he doesn't actually know what to do. He doesn't have that rhythm built into his daily life. So now it's more like the servants are kind of hanging outside waiting until he stirs and saying, do you want some breakfast, king? What do you want? And like his whole rhythm in his daily life is different, and it's not the same. And so as a result, there is no expectation, there's no muscle memory, there's no discipline built in to how he's going to live his life. And then he ends up doing something that is such a tragedy when you think about it, because it ends with him ordering the death of one of his own dear friends, his mighty man Uriah. And then Bathsheba eventually becomes his wife, they lose a child. Then, God, in the end, after Prophet Nathan comes to him and gives him the whole account, says, look, there was a man who had so many sheep and lambs and cattle and all of this over here, and next to him lived a man with one little sheep. And this man took that one little sheep away. And King David is listening to the account going, oh, this is bad. Hi, Hudson. Are you coming in here for real?
I'm staying in Snackland.
Okay. So in that instance, and Nathan, the prophet, points at him and says, "You are the man." When after King David is angry and upset with the other man for taking the one little lamb. And I just think of the repentance that happened with David, how he changed, and eventually God actually redeemed the whole Bathsheba-David thing and used the fruit of Bathsheba's womb. King Solomon became, the king, one of the wisest men who ever lived. And so we see how God redeems something, but we also see that the lack of discipline, the lack of rhythm, that's the way I'm looking at it. And so I just think of the things that I'm supposed to do every day. Like, Hudson, do you have chores you have to do every day? Yeah.
Yes.
And what happens when you don't do them? Like if you just forget about them and suddenly it's nighttime, how does that feel when you're like, oh, we didn't, what's your chore outside?
Feeding my bunnies.
Feeding your not bunnies. You don't have bunnies.
Oh yeah, turkey.
You have a cat. Yeah, feeding Starlight, the cat. So you have to take care of the cat. And if you don't take care of the cat and then suddenly it's nighttime, you think, oh no, what's my cat going to eat? What if she runs to someone else's house and becomes someone else's cat? Yeah, that would be sad. And so you have responsibilities. We all have daily rhythms, routines that we get into. And I think it's important to recognize that even the boring daily routines are necessary, and they're good, and they're useful for the kingdom. Are you about to head out? All right. I love you, buddy. And so any little rhythm or routine about my daily life becomes an actual spiritual blessing, something that's important, something that's good. And so if in my morning rhythm, in my case, my morning rhythm has I try to read or listen to scripture. I have a few things that I do in the mornings. And if I'm getting up at 4:30 for the film shoot, then that's what I'm doing before my breakfast there. If I'm getting up at 6 here at home, well, then I'm doing it at that time. But I have certain things that I do. When I get up in the morning, here's what I do. For instance, in my morning rhythm, there are several things. Like before I have a cup of coffee, I'm going to drink some water. Usually I measure it. I want to make sure it's at least 16 ounces of water before I go to any other beverage. And often it's 24 to 32 ounces. Before I drink coffee in the morning, just because I don't want to get in the habit of first thing in the morning drinking a diuretic with the coffee. I want to actually drink some real fluids for my body. So, yeah, Gerald, I agree. If I could only understand everything that went on in the minds of my little people, I think it'd be amazing. But maybe it's just, I don't know. I just don't know how deeply they think. And hey, Verl, thanks for checking in. So the main thing that I got out of it this morning as I was reading that was the importance of the daily rhythm. And I know that for myself, like there are times when I've walked into the kitchen in the morning and then maybe the water filter hadn't been refilled last night. So I start refilling the water filter, and then William calls from the bedroom. He needs help getting dressed. And so I'm off in there, and pretty soon I'm doing all these other things, and I haven't yet had my bottle of water, because I have a water bottle that I'll use to measure how much water I'm drinking. And so then I'm like, I want coffee. I'm like, oh, well, I haven't had my water bottle yet. Where's my bottle of water? And pretty soon I'm walking around. I'm thirsty. I'm behind my schedule. My routine is broken, and it can be disorienting. So that's on a simple thing on a regular morning. But what about other rhythms of our life, like the routines? I think of the routine. Maybe it's the midweek prayer meeting. Or a weekday night prayer gathering. I know for myself, when I don't go for a season, let's say I'm traveling or whatever, and I'm home, I think, wait a minute, why are we doing this? And I can find every reason and excuse to not go to that prayer gathering. But when I do go to the prayer gathering, I always come away blessed, encouraged, and strengthened. I'm like, okay, I'm glad I went. I'm glad I did that. But I can't tell you how many times I am tempted to break that rhythm and that routine. And I know that could happen with Sunday morning gathering of believers. It could happen with so many pieces of your life, rhythm, things that you have going. And so good morning, John. Thank you for joining in. And so we have rhythms about our life that can be healthy and good. Now, I know you could have bad habits too, right? And so you might say, okay, I got to break this rhythm. I got to break this routine. I get that. But that's not what I'm talking about now. Right now, I'm talking about all the little rhythms that don't seem all that spiritual or holy in and of themselves, but the power of just knowing what you do next. Like I mentioned earlier, King David, when he goes out to battle, he knows the smell of leather and the armor that he's putting on. He understands what to do when he's in camp. He understands the whole eating process and cooking over the campfires. And all. He's used to that. He's done that a lot. When he gets into that mode, he just automatically rolls into it, and he has all of his generals coming and reporting to him. He knows how to respond and how to act. The rhythm just flows. But when he's back in his palace, without his mighty men reporting back to him, without his generals reporting back to him, he falls out of rhythm. And so this is something that I take quite personally. It's like, I don't want to fall out of rhythm, because God has given me a lot to do. He's given me a lot of blessings. He's given me a lot of beautiful things all around my life, and I want to take care of those things. But I could fall out of the rhythm and the routine on a daily basis, which could actually open me up to temptations, where I'm suddenly rising from my couch at the end of the day and walking around and looking. I'm out of rhythm. I'm not in the right, instead of coming in for supper, I'm getting up from bed and I'm just like, what's going on? And, this happens sometimes when I'm sick, there are days, like I recently had some where my body was battling something and I had to take a little bit more time to rest in the middle of the day than I normally would. And so I would be rising from the couch later in the day. But once I added enough rest to my body, I actually felt great and was able to go back and get back into the normal rhythm. But that's my question for myself, and I guess for you guys, is what are the rhythms that you have built into your life on a daily basis, and how easily can you get knocked out of those? Like if you have something you say, oh yes, this is what I do, how easy is it to just lose that rhythm? We have the daily rhythms, the times we get up, the times we go to bed. We have when we eat, those rhythms, who we eat with, what we eat. Those are all rhythms, routines. We have the weekly rhythms, which days we meet with who. How easy is that to keep that? Or some people have a date night with their wives on certain nights every week. Some people, we have the gatherings with other believers early in the morning. We have the prayer gatherings at night. We have the weekly gathering when we all come together. We worship and sing together and hear teaching from the Word of God. We have those kind of rhythms and routines that are built in, and they're good. And so think of it the same way, when you say, well, in the spring of the year when kings go to battle, well, now just use that phrase again and say, well, on Tuesday mornings when the men gather to encourage each other in the faith, I stayed home. And then what happens? What's the result? When you say, well, it was a Wednesday night when the believers were gathering for prayer, and I decided to just stay home and turn in early. What actually is happening? Is it just the fact that you broke one routine, or are you opening yourself up to an unknown quantity of temptation? And it's a question I have, because I think that's what when God builds things into my life, when I say, okay, this is valuable, and I start doing this is valuable, I do this is valuable, I add it to my calendar. At some point I say, okay, I'm doing too many things, it's too much, I'm sick of it all, and I just quit all of it. I'm left swimming and floundering, and I don't want to do that. I want to continually build in the things in my life so that, at the dawn of the morning, I am where I'm supposed to be. In the spring of the year, I am where I'm supposed to be. On the first day of the week, I am where I'm supposed to be. On a Tuesday morning or a Wednesday night or a Saturday morning, I am where I'm supposed to be. Now, there's times when I'm sent out, I'm doing something else, I get it. There's different rhythms for me when I'm on the road or working on a different project, but I have rhythms nonetheless. And so when the rhythm comes around, when the routine comes, am I where I'm supposed to be? That was my question that I got out of King David's account, and how, it went so wrong so fast. He gets up, yawns, stretches, goes up on his roof, sees Bathsheba, calls her over, and immediately has an affair with her. Just immediately. Like you go, wait, it went from in the spring of the year when kings go to battle, King David sends out his generals, and he sends out Joab to lead, and then next thing you know, he's sleeping with his neighbor's wife, just like that. And you think, what went wrong? How did this even happen? Well, he broke a routine and a discipline. Our physical bodies actually thrive with a certain level of discipline. We can become too disciplined at times where it hurts us, but we need a certain amount of discipline. And so there's a certain amount of routine and discipline that's healthy for us. And we can find those, like I now know that if I get 6.5 hours of sleep, I can function. If I get 7.5 hours of sleep every night, I can thrive. It's just a difference. But I have to have at least 6.5 to function. If I go less than 6.5, my body usually starts reacting and I get a cold and I get sick or whatever else happens. It's amazing to me how just my body knows how much sleep I need, and if I deprive it of that, like, I don't have enough power to fight back. So, what are the routines that you're building into your life, and how are you protecting those? Because in the spring of the year when kings go to battle, David would have been better off going to battle like a king ought to have, instead of staying home on his couch. I have several other topics that I really have been wanting to talk about, and so I'm going to bring those in. I wrote some of them down. I might actually do a second coffee talk this week because I missed last week. I was on the film shoot, and it was a busy week. I lost all my regular rhythms and routines, what I'm talking about right now, because I went into the film shoot routine where I was getting up early, working late, all on this one project, and almost everything else got pushed to the side. I managed to maintain the rhythm of Sunday, where I was at church and I was preaching, but there was a lot of the routines that got messed up. So these are just a few of my thoughts on the importance of routine and rhythm, and the realization that I can actually build them into my world. I don't have to just be a victim of what everyone else is saying. And an example of this is, I remember when I worked as a mechanic, we started work at 8 o'clock in the morning. When I worked in construction, we started work at 7 o'clock in the morning. When I'm working in film, we start at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I've taught with people who their job starts at 5 o'clock in the morning. And there's all kinds of different hours. Like when I was working as a Choice Books representative, if I wanted to get all my work done in time, I would have to leave the house a lot of times at 2:30 in the morning. 2:30 to 3:30, somewhere in there, depending on what my route looked like that day. I'd have to leave just to get to all the stores before noon, and sometimes 1 o'clock there'd be something. So my rhythm would change depending on what my goal and my focus was. And what I discovered during those times, I remember thinking about this when I was a mechanic. I remember really feeling it when I was working in construction. And it was this: I'd get irritated. Why are we starting at this time every day? Like, man, like I don't even have time for a devotional in the morning. Like, why is this so early? And I would feel like a victim until I'd say, wait a minute, it's my life. And if I have to get up in time to leave the house at 7 or 7:30 or whatever the timing was, how much time do I need to eat? How much time do I need to get dressed? How much time do I need for devotional? That's how much time I need to get up before I need to be on the road. And if I took responsibility for myself, I could actually create that little bit of margin and that space and add a routine to my day. And if I would just spend 5 minutes reading the Word of God, take a moment to pray, settle my heart on Him, then the rest of the day functioned better because I was functioning better. And so I want to make sure that I don't make it sound like, your job dictates what and messes up your rhythm. Because in the end, you actually are in charge of you, and you get to choose when you get up and which means you also have to choose when you go to bed, I guess. But there are so many rhythms in our daily lives, and some are annual, some are monthly, some are weekly, some are daily. Some of them are more, several times a day. The way we eat and such can all be a rhythm that we build into our life, rhythms and routines. So think about it. What are the routines that you have in your life? How much are you building them intentionally? Are they just happening to you? Are you a victim of them, or are you actually being blessed by them? Those are my thoughts for this week. I'll see you guys next Coffee Talk. Might be later this week.